Um, yeah, that film is. Oh, darn it. Um, yeah, I'm still not on Facebook. Facebook is. I put forward an appeal to see if I can get my account back, um, but haven't heard anything. And the gotcha with Facebook, of course, is that it's 15 plus years of interaction with people, many of whom I no longer have their contact information beyond Facebook, or people who only contact me through Facebook. And also, there are certain things that logins that are tied to Facebook. So I don't recommend in the future, don't use Facebook as a way to easily log into something because of the really crappy nature of the Meta company. Um, so that last film was silent. We had the original preprint materials for it. There was no accompanying soundtrack. And this is part of a series. The Pierrot and the whatever. It's all related to weather science. And the illustrations for that I really dug, but just barely animated. Just barely. I'm Skip Alzheimer. Welcome to the AV Geeks Lunchtime Streaming Show, where we watch old 16mm films and judge them harshly. This next film is about salmon. Enjoy.
The haunting and plaintive cry of these seagulls marks an annual event of great importance to a special fleet of fishing boats about to put to sea on a hunt for one of the most valuable of our fishing crops, the mighty Chinook salmon. Salmon once were so thick in our waters and so much a staple article of diet that servants insisted they should not be forced to eat salmon more than twice a week. How times change. Today, salmon is considered a luxury to eat, as well as a great challenge to a fisherman who wants a real fighter on the end of his line. Salmon frequent the cold waters of the northern Pacific and travel in great schools. When a lucky fishing boat spots one of these schools, the delicious fish can be netted by the thousands. Today, they are one of the most valued of our fishing crops, and as they grow scarcer, are even more highly prized. During the run, floating salmon canneries work around the clock to get the catch processed and into cans as fast as possible. The salmon spawn in the cold, fresh waters of our northern rivers and creeks. After spending years in the ocean growing fat and sleek, there comes a time when they return to the waters in which they were spawned, sometimes traveling thousands of miles in the process. They fight their way upstream in the face of all manner of tremendous obstacles, including fishermen, natural enemies, and swiftly flowing falls and rapids. But nothing stops these determined fish. They surmount the rapids and falls with amazing leaps that carry them over the rocks and eventually bring them to the calm waters of their native creeks. Salmon will not lay their eggs unless the water is 54 degrees or colder. If the water is too warm, they will loaf and wait for it to get down to the desired temperature before digging the shallow nests in the gravel of the creek beds in which they deposit their thousands of eggs. The nest or hole completed to their satisfaction, they will lay their eggs, which eventually hatch into young. The salmon eggs also have many enemies. Other fish eat them, they are valued as bait, and freshets will sweep them downstream. The incubation period of the eggs is from 4 to 6 months, depending upon the temperature of the water. The young fish will stay in the upper creeks for approximately 2 years before heading downstream toward the ocean. These are of the size called fingerlings, very small now, but in a few years they will be as big as these and a great prize for any fisherman.
So that was probably something that was shown on television, potentially, as a quick little info thing about... I have another one in the series called Let's Talk About Future Farmers. So it seems like this is has an agricultural bend to it, natural resource bend. Yeah. So inadvertently, I have a couple of films about air and wind. So this is the next one is, and this is all just the serendipity. Maybe my subconscious was like, oh yeah, this one. Oh yeah, this one. But no, the first film we showed was Pierrot and the Wind, and this is Artificial Respiration. No giggling, please.
The first fundamental of first aid usually taught is artificial respiration, a means of imitating the natural breathing process. When breathing stops, our source of oxygen is cut off. If the body's vital organs have not been damaged, especially the heart, there is an excellent chance for survival. The important factor is that oxygen-rich air be taken into the lungs where the body's system can use it, and quickly. Any delay may be fatal. Knowledge of the respiratory system will help you to understand how artificial respiration works and why it works. The respiratory system is made up of three basic parts: the air passage, consisting of the nose, throat, and windpipe, the lungs, and a flexible diaphragm in the chest. Respiration, or breathing, involves two separate acts. The first is inhalation, when normal air is taken into the lungs. The second is exhalation, when used air is forced out. At the lower end of the throat, the air passes through the trachea, or windpipe, an opening that leads to the lungs. The second opening behind the windpipe leads to the stomach. This is the esophagus, or food pipe. The windpipe extends into the chest cavity, where it divides into the two bronchial tubes, one leading to each lung. After entering the lungs, the tubes keep dividing and redividing, ending in groups of thin-walled cells that are surrounded by capillaries. Oxygen from the lungs is absorbed by the capillaries. This oxygen in the blood is then distributed to all parts of the body. At the same time, carbon dioxide, a waste product of the body, is carried by the blood back to the lungs and released into the air within the cells. It then passes from the air cells when air is exhaled from the lungs. During inhalation, muscles in the chest expand the rib cage and the diaphragm flattens, thereby increasing the capacity of the chest. This creates a slight vacuum. Air then rushes into the lungs to fill this vacuum. Upon exhalation, the muscles relax, the chest shrinks, and the diaphragm bows, putting a pressure on the air-filled lungs that forces the air up and through the air passage. This breathing cycle takes place 12 to 15 times per minute in an adult at rest. Children breathe slightly faster. At the top of the windpipe is a flap called the epiglottis, which closes over the windpipe when a person swallows to prevent food or liquid from entering. When a person is unconscious, this flap may fail to act. For this reason, it is important that no solids or liquids be given, since they may enter the windpipe and cause strangulation. If the victim is lying on his back, his tongue may fall back on the epiglottis and close the windpipe. This can also prevent air from reaching the lungs. Therefore, always see that the tongue is pulled forward and the chin extended when a person is unconscious or when breathing is difficult. Breathing may be stopped as a result of a variety of serious injuries, such as electric shock, drowning, suffocation, and gas poisoning. Suffocation or asphyxiation occurs when the windpipe is blocked, or as in this case, from breathing harmful gases, such as carbon monoxide. Symptoms of suffocation are nausea, loss of consciousness, discoloration of lips and earlobes, the pupils of the eyes become dilated, and breathing stops. The victim is removed from the dangerous or gaseous area if necessary, and any obstructions removed from his air passage. Artificial respiration must be quickly started. This is the Holger-Nielsen back pressure arm lift, one of the 4 methods of artificial respiration recommended. Another method of artificial respiration is the Schaefer or prone pressure method. The Sylvester method of artificial respiration may be used when injuries or wounds may preclude the use of other methods. Mouth-to-mouth resuscitation is considered the most efficient and practical method of artificial respiration because it provides more air to the lungs directly and immediately than any other technique. When a person has stopped breathing, don't waste time. Begin resuscitation immediately. Medical help should also be summoned. First, make sure the victim's tongue or any foreign object is not blocking the airflow to the lungs. Sweep your fingers through the mouth to clear away any obstructions. Lift up the head and tilt it backwards to its most extreme position. Pull the lower jaw forward. Keep one hand under the victim's neck to keep the head tilted back. Pinch the nostrils together. This prevents loss of air through the nose. Open your mouth wide, inhale deeply, and place your mouth tightly over the victim's mouth and blow into the air passage until the victim's chest rises. If the stomach bulges, air is being diverted into the stomach. Press gently on the stomach. This will cause the air to be released through the mouth. Then readjust the head farther back and try again. After removing your mouth, listen closely for the return flow of air. Repeat this procedure 12 to 15 times a minute for an adult and about 20 gentle puffs per minute for a small child. You should continue artificial respiration until the victim begins to breathe for himself. When a victim is revived, he should be kept as quiet as possible until he is breathing regularly. He should be kept covered and treated for shock until suitable transportation is available if he must be moved. When the patient is fully conscious, a stimulant may be given. 1 teaspoon of aromatic spirits of ammonia in a glass half full of water, or an ammonia ampule may be passed under the patient's nose. A doctor's care is advised during the patient's recovery period, as respiratory and other disturbances may develop as an aftermath. In some cases where the victim's jaws are clenched too tightly and the mouth cannot be opened easily, mouth-to-nose resuscitation may be performed. It is similar to the mouth-to-mouth method, except the victim's lips are sealed with the rescuer's index finger of the hand on the chin, and the rescuer blows into the victim's nose. Those who do not wish to come in contact with the victim's mouth may hold a handkerchief over it. This does not greatly affect the exchange of air. Remember, certain basic principles must be kept in mind when giving mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Clear the air passage. Position the victim for artificial respiration. And begin at once. In emergencies, everyone should be prepared to breathe for someone else, whether it be their own child, a neighbor, or a fellow worker.
So, that was artificial respiration before CPR. And I actually have films that kind of introduce the concept of CPR as far as the heart massage by compressions on the chest. Excuse me. So some in the chatter there was talk about the TV show Wonder Chosen, which was this comedy show that was on MTV2. That was outrageous. It was originally called Kids Show Warning Adult Content. That was the original title of it. And they approached me to use some footage for the first season. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. But they were super enthusiastic and amazing to work with. And for the second season, they actually sent down a producer for a week who stayed in Raleigh. And we went through a bunch of stuff. And she was awesome. And we're friends. And so I keep in touch. Occasionally they ping me for different things, but they really got the footage. And it's funny, like in an interview that came out, one of them was saying it's Vernon Chapman, John Lee. They've done a lot of projects since then. But one of them was saying that the films, they were asked about where the films came from. They said it was from a haunted orphanage in North Carolina. So they kind of, I don't know what their impressions were, but I'll take that. Haunted orphanage, sure. All right, so we showed Pierrot in the Wind, artificial respiration. This next film is called Wind in the Wires. So all about air and wind. Enjoy.
Paris, the Eiffel Tower, the turn of the century. An age in which it seems everyone suddenly wants to fly. From 800 feet up, a birdman prepares to hurl himself to certain death. Yet such was the breathless pace of endeavor and ignorance of the time that this doomed man thought he could fly. Today, it seems inconceivable that a man wearing feathery wings could fly like a bird. But a mere 70 years ago, they had only the birds to go on. Manned flight, something we now so easily accept, remained a distant dream. Then there came a decade in which the collective genius of a few pioneers transformed that dream into reality and brought the aeroplane into being. It began one summer, the time 1909. That summer was not unlike many others. Edwardian Britain was rich, content, and comfortable. In the New World, a bicycle maker named Wright had flown a machine some 40 yards, and since then others had flown even further. Their extraordinary enterprise to be greeted, alas, with doubt and derision. Flying was not taken seriously by most people until a national newspaper offered a prize of £1,000 for any aviator bold enough to fly the English Channel. And that really started something. The scene, 4 a.m., a beach just south of Calais, as the intrepid aviator Louis Blériot hobbles away to take up the challenge. Since a catastrophe is to be expected, the event draws a large crowd. Yet an hour later, Blériot's little oil-stained monoplane scraped over the high cliffs surrounding Dover Castle and crash-landed. The world could talk of little else for days. Blériot accepted his check, supped with the Lord Mayor, returned home triumphant, and entered the history books. For from this beach, one July morning, he made a successful crossing of some 20 miles of water. He conquered the unconquerable, shook Britain's imperial solitude, and heralded the beginning of an age. The summer was a fruitful one. A wind of change resulted in what some termed the beginning of an industry, which indeed, through the enterprise of a few, it was. The first aeroplanes were trembling, moth-like machines of wire and wood, and many a brave pilot flew them. But since there were no books to learn from, they had to lean heavily on their own intuition. But where could they develop and refine the new skills? Standing in the middle of scrub and weeds are the huts of the world's first flying school. And although as yet no such person existed as an experienced teacher, Brooklands became the mecca for every would-be flyer. What was this field like then? From these huts came the little planes that the early pioneers put together, craft so delicate that a man could push them or pull them, or even hold one of them down against strong winds. Here, pilots and designers like Rowe, de Havilland, Hawker, and Sopwith met, built, swapped ideas, and, flying with their caps back to front, set an indelible stamp. Racing round a marker and back, flying forever higher, forever faster, the aviators thrilled the crowds. The machines were still experimental. It took a certain madness to fly them. Crashes often occurred, and a good landing was one from which the pilot walked away, and in doing so, thanked his maker. A report from the Army maneuvers, Salisbury Plain, 1910. Today, at the flying school at Lark Hill, some trials were carried out with the Bristol biplane. The machine was specially built for the purpose and was commenced and delivered within 17 days, which is probably a record for airplane construction. At the dawn of the day, Captain Bartram Dixon took the Bristol on its first essay after erection, and it immediately did a fine flight, showing notable stability. By now, the labor of a few had stirred the imagination of the many. From makeshift hangars emerged the experimental efforts of other men, whose problems were also those of sheer survival, for many a spider web of struts, slats, and spars was built with borrowed money and mortgaged houses. To these trailblazers there was no looking back, and through their endeavors, Britain began to take a world lead. The Wright brothers themselves came to impress the military with their flyer, a machine which a few years earlier had been a world beater, but now to many looked somewhat outmoded. Laffan's Plain, Farnborough, was where the demonstration took place, a site destined to become an important center of development. Here, flying in the face of adversity, men of resolution and determination forged ahead. They invented stable flight, changed skids for wheels, monoplanes for biplanes or triplanes. With the stimulus of competition, records for speed and altitude were broken almost weekly. They leapt ahead, testing mark after mark, type after type, flying into the unknown and, in the process, sometimes killing themselves. When we began, said Sir Thomas Sopwith, we just flew by the light of nature. We weren't structural engineers at all. Everything was built entirely by eye. Flying in those days was empirical. It was a constant gamble. Some of us were lucky, and some of us weren't. The unlucky ones made the headlines. They included the first Briton to fly, the man who invented stable flight, and countless others. To those who built monuments, they were gay young fellows jockeying winged horses. Their exploits were deemed audacious, never visionary. Those who flew on logged a diary of hard-earned progress. With controllable flight, they thought they'd solved the unsolvable. But there still remained the elements and the hazards of every new, untried machine. But, come what might, there was no halting the advance, and gifted young designers were doodling, in penny exercise books, newer, sleeker, and more powerful shapes. Within 5 years, the early frailty was gone. Tubular steel replaced wood. And the target of so many pioneers, the true beauty of safe, reliable flight, seemed now within reach. The summer of 1914 is said to have been glorious, and there were few who basked in it who foresaw the approaching Armageddon. The spark that was referred to as some little trouble in the Balkans burst into flames, and the ensuing war spread throughout Europe. Battle planes replaced aeroplanes, and, as Orville Wright said, the dream has turned into a nightmare. The military spoke of fleets of aerial dreadnoughts, but at the outset, the legacy of years of official neglect amounted to little more than 100 ill-equipped machines for the Allies. While the first dogfights were fought with pistols and hand-thrown bombs, the official distrust remained. The cavalry complained that the machines frightened their horses. Yet to break the stagnation of trench warfare, much depended on those airplanes and on those pilots. The pictures that survive show groups of tender-looking youngsters, British, French, German, equally brave, equally vulnerable. Most of them to die in their early 20s. In a world short of heroes, the public rose to these daring aces. Although thousands were dying daily in the mud below, it was the flyers who became the national heroes. Pilots like Mannock, Fonck, Bishop, Baumer, Ball, and a host of others became the knights of the sky. They devised aerial warfare, yet mourned the deaths of each other's heroes. They spoiled for a fight, yet were known to break off combat with a wave of the hand. Their exploits became legend, their stories legion. The skies will never see flyers like this again. The apparently benign, smiling German ace von Richthofen was glorified. In charge of his flying circus, the Red Baron shot down over 80 planes prior to his own death at the age of 22. Crashing behind Allied lines, his plane was torn to pieces by souvenir hunters. Yet so great was the respect for the enemy flyer, he was given a general's funeral. To our gallant and worthy foe, inscribed the British aces. An enemy in life, a brother in death. The war accelerated the development of the airplane quicker than 1,000 newspaper prizes. From every corner came new ideas, new demands. Engines and structures became more reliable, and thereby more deadly, and finally instrumental in speeding the end of the last hopelessly landlocked war. At the start of the war, aeroplanes were counted in tens, and towards the end, counted in tens of thousands. Now, the fighting flying machine commanded respect, and the men who lined up for the final pictures were aware of the effort that had led to their final recognition. On the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, 1918, the war ended. Within its duration, the aeroplane had altered from a single-engined, delicate device to a sturdy, four-engined monster. And from the turmoil of the war to end wars came the men and machines to tackle the last great aerial barriers. Within months of the armistice, the crowds cheered yet again, this time to welcome the safe arrival of two new-style pioneers, John Alcock and Arthur Whitten Brown. Flying a Vimy, which was conceived as a bomber, they had crossed the Atlantic. They had survived a radio failure, engines choked with ice, and a crash landing. In their slipstream came two brothers, Ross and Keith Smith, who in a remarkable flight, also in a Vimy, made it to Australia. Voyaging over hostile jungle, they were forced to land in countries like Borneo and Guinea, where the natives had never seen a white man, let alone an aeroplane. Flying forever onwards, these trailblazers and others linked Britain with the far corners of the empire and formed an image of the world, a smaller place, which indeed it had become. Now the makers of monuments saw the flying heroes in a different vein. But alongside so much progress, there came the setbacks. A multitude of winged wonders collapsed, crashed, thrashed, splashed, or just shook themselves to death before the camera. And, of course, there was still the gent who thought he could fly like a bird. By 1919, a decade had passed. And although in the countryside little had visibly altered, by this autumn, with a different king, more autocars, and peace with plenty, came aviation. Now man had flying machines to fight, challenge height, and span distance. And in his vision of the future, the sky was his, and it had no limits.
So some of you feel like this might get me in trouble, this song. So we're just going to sit and watch this amazing footage. I like that many of you went to the compilation reel or montage of all these other attempts to fly. That footage is used a lot. That's why it resonates, I think, with most of you. But the thing that interests me about it is how it's used. Like sometimes it's used to say like, look at the craziness, look how crazy people are, and this was crazy. And then some people use it as a like, this is man was driven to fly, and here's all the different attempts to try to get it right. And I think that some of these tricks are crazy. I think that it's a little bit of both. Personally, I think that one of the drives was because the Wright brothers patented their flying machine, and so others were trying to come up with other ways to patent theirs because they knew it was a way that they would get rich. And there was all these different attempts and craziness. Let me see if this is still playing. It is. So one of the things that I've been using the name AV Geeks for a long time, 30 years. Well, sometime in the 2000s, AV Geeks was then appropriated to be Aviation Geeks, which annoys me a little bit because AV is audiovisual, and they could have made it AVI Geeks, but they didn't. And so there's this constant battle with tagging and keywords and with usernames. AV Aviation versus AV Audiovisual. I haven't felt like I need to seek legal counsel or anything. I mean, they do what they do, and we have this wonderful overlap where I show stuff from related to aviation at different times, so I don't mind that overlap. All right, so what do we got next? God, so many things. I know that some of you are looking for a new job. Have you thought about whether clerical work is for you? Let's sing along and find out.
What you gonna do when the time comes and you have to earn your way? What you gonna do when the time comes and you have to earn your pay? What will you do when you're finally on your own? What will you do when you're finally on your own?
Chances are you've already thought about the possibilities of working in an office. Indeed, you may have already pictured yourself in one or more clerical jobs, maybe as a file clerk, a typist, or a typing supervisor, a stenographer, a secretary. Maybe you'd be interested in a career involving financial matters. as a bookkeeper, cashier, or a bank teller. There are other clerical jobs, too. Have you considered a career, say, as an office machine operator? Working as a computer operator is in the clerical field. Included as clerical workers are telephone operators, receptionists, shipping and receiving clerks, stock clerks, mail clerks, and mail carriers. This film will acquaint you with clerical jobs and qualifications for them, and a great deal more. Clerical workers are needed by virtually every business, government agency, and the armed forces in the United States and in the world. More than 14 million men and women do clerical work in the United States, and employment is increasing rapidly as large and complex organizations in business and government expand. Opportunities will be best for secretaries, stenographers, typists, bookkeeping and accounting clerks, and others who handle paperwork. They will be needed particularly in banks and insurance companies, in manufacturing establishments, and in wholesale and retail trade, in government offices, educational institutions, professional service organizations, and in the armed services. The clerical field is particularly important to women. Women hold 70% of the jobs. It's a field in which women can work for a while, leave to have or care for a family, and return when home responsibilities lessen. A high school education is usually the minimum requirement for clerical work. Graduates with high school instruction in business subjects are regarded as well qualified by most employers. Many in clerical occupations have had additional education after high school, in colleges, junior colleges, private business schools, or the Armed Forces Service Schools. Beginning clerical workers receive some on-the-job training in the employer's special ways of doing things. Clerical workers in many kinds of jobs must understand easily what they read. They must know arithmetic, grammar, and how to spell. Opportunities are good in many types of office work to advance to better paid jobs, even to supervisory or managerial positions. Having clerical skills enables many young people to get an entry job in an industry or business firm where they'd like to work. There they have a chance to learn about the business and move ahead. Earnings of clerical workers vary substantially, even within the same occupation. To learn what salaries are paid in your area, see the people in the local office of your state employment service. Stenographers and secretaries make up the largest group of clerical workers, 20% of the total. 95% are women. Just about all stenographers and secretaries take dictation and transcribe it on a typewriter. Stenographers take dictation from one or more persons. Many have additional duties. Technical stenographers take dictation in medical, legal, or scientific terms. Others are public stenographers. Reporting stenographers record proceedings usually on a machine in court, at conventions, and at other meetings. In addition to stenographic work, secretaries are their boss's right hand and handle many business details for him, such as getting airline and hotel reservations, arranging meetings, answering some correspondence, even anniversary shopping for him. Some secretaries specialize in legal, medical, and other technical work. In addition to facility with spelling, punctuation, grammar, and vocabulary, stenographers and secretaries should have these qualities. Many stenographers advance to better paying positions as secretaries. Both stenographers and secretaries may be promoted to such positions as administrative assistant or office supervisor. The typewriter is also the business partner of many hundreds of thousands of typists in all kinds of public and private enterprises. Typists transcribe from handwritten or printed copy. Many combine typing with other kinds of office work. Qualifications for a typist include a rate of 40 to 50 words per minute. Typists must have these: and the ability to concentrate in the midst of distractions. Many good typists advance to secretary or stenographer by learning to take dictation at 80 or more words per minute. Bookkeepers and accounting clerks comprise the second largest group of clerical workers. They record transactions by hand in journals and ledgers and on other forms and prepare income statements. Most employers prefer high school graduates who have taken business arithmetic and bookkeeping. Bookkeeping workers should be good with numbers and details. They may advance to more responsible assignments, to operation of complex bookkeeping machines, or to supervision. Workers operate many different machines to speed the paperwork in the modern business office. Bookkeeping machines record financial transactions, billing machines on which customers' bills are prepared. Tabulating machines, they sort and count statistical information. Adding and calculating machines. Copiers for a few copies. Duplicating machines for long runs. Equipment for processing mail. For high school or business school graduates, a general knowledge of the equipment is usually enough to obtain a beginning job. Promotion may be to a more complex machine. Employers and the armed services often provide the needed training. Or a worker may be assigned to train others, or be promoted to a section or department head. Machine operators should have these: jobs for computer operating personnel are chiefly in government agencies, the largest users of computers, and in insurance companies, banks, wholesale and retail business, transportation and public utility companies, manufacturing firms, and independent service organizations that process data for other firms. Data to be processed is coded on cards by key punch operators, or on paper tape by data typists. A console operator checks the input of coded data, studies instructions of the programmer who laid out the procedure, and starts the run, to make up a payroll, for example. Beginners, who must have at least a high school education, are usually trained after they are hired. Operators should be able to reason logically, learn new techniques, and understand technical material. Promotion is to more complex assignments, to supervisor, and with more study, to programmer. This is a fast-growing field. Employment is expected to increase very rapidly. Almost 1 million cashiers in the United States received payments made by customers for goods and services. 3/4 of all cashiers work in grocery, drug, and other retail stores, and a substantial number in restaurants and theaters. Employers prefer to hire high school graduates and train them in classrooms or informally on the job. Cashiers should be accurate, have a facility with figures, and good finger dexterity. Since they deal with the public, they should be tactful, pleasant, and neat. Beginners' salaries are often at or near the minimum wage required by law. but employment in this occupation is expected to increase rapidly. Bank tellers receive and pay out money and record the transactions. To many customers, the teller is the bank. So tellers must be neat, tactful, and courteous. As banks expand their services, the number of tellers is expected to increase very rapidly. 60% of telephone operators work for telephone companies. Most are long-distance operators. Many are directory assistance operators. Due to direct calling and other changes, little or no growth in employment is expected. 40% are PBX operators who run in-house switchboards serving all kinds of establishments. Employment of PBX operators is expected to rise slowly.
Why can't I talk to a human being instead of listening to this?
Operators should have a pleasing voice, be courteous.
I'm terribly sorry, sir. If you'd like to hold, I'll check the circuits for you. Thank you.
And should like to serve the public.
I'd like to report a fire at the home of...
The receptionist is her employer's public representative. She greets visitors, gives them information, and directs them to the right office or person. Almost all receptionists are women. More than half of them are employed in the offices of professional people. Many others work in hospitals, educational institutions, banks and insurance companies, and manufacturing firms. In contrast to all the clerical occupations you have seen to this point, men are predominantly employed as shipping and receiving clerks, as stock clerks, postal clerks and their counterparts in private business, mail clerks, and mail carriers. Working conditions for clerical workers are generally very good. A 40-hour work week is the rule, although many employees in some occupations may have to work during abnormal hours. Clerical workers are usually part of a team and depend on each other to do their job. A clerical job is something you can try on while still in school by working at it part-time. Some companies provide such work opportunities for students, or you can offer your help in your school office or do volunteer clerical work for your church, a political organization, or school activity. Clerical work may be for you, but before you decide, find out about all the other career areas. Seek occupational information on your own. Talk with your school counselor. Talk with your parents. Not only salary data, but information about local employment conditions and opportunities can be obtained from the State Employment Service people. Discuss clerical opportunities with a recruiter at your local armed forces recruiting offices. With your counselor's help, choose the just right career for you and map out the education and training you'll need and get moving on it. Start shaping a good life for yourself now. Only you can do it.
What you gonna do when the time comes and you have to earn your way? What you gonna do when the time comes and you have to earn your pay? What will you do when you're finally on your own? What will you do when you're finally on your own?
What will you really do?
July 1st, 1946, the D-Day of Operation Crossroads, the atomic bomb test supervised by Vice Admiral Blandy at Bikini Atoll in mid-Pacific. crews leave the target ships in Bikini Lagoon, many for the last time. The B-29 Dave's Dream takes off from Kwajalein to deliver the bomb, equal to 50,000 tons of TNT, while an electric metronome counts the final second. Cover your eyes. Now, bomb away! A deadly radioactive cloud rises over 7 miles. Cloud shifts are tangled wrecks. The battleship Nevada is towed into position for the second test, Test Baker. King Judah of Bikini watches with Admiral Blandy as LST-60 moves into place. The bomb is suspended beneath LST-60 and is to be fired by remote control. The technicians and Vice Admiral Parsons leave LST-60 and the bomb. At the control room, Crossroads personnel are checked, then locked in. Dr. Holloway, Los Alamos director, readies the firing circuit.
Seconds before H hour.
Cameras are ready aboard ship and in the sky.
2, 1, fire!
Plutonium, half the weight of a dime, caused this. This is what can destroy our world unless we find the road to peace now.
Subscribing to the Night Flight channel on Roku, and there's a bunch of music videos from the 80s, and there's so many that use this footage. It's kind of crazy how often this atomic test footage shows up. It's just like, oh, they use that again, and like, oh, what a horrible dupe of that. And so that was the 80s reconciling atomic tests. Thanks for tuning in today. It's always a pleasure to show films to you. If you like what you saw, you can hit the thumbs up or the like button. What else can you do? Oh, you can buy us some coffee at ko-fi.com/avgeeks. That's one way that because we love our coffee. Not necessarily Folgers, but another thing you can do is there's a super thanks button in YouTube. You can hit that little dollar bill thing and you can donate that way. And also patreon.com/avgeeks is another way to support us, and this helps us buy a leader, 60mm leader. We use a lot of it to put to the heads and tails of films so they can go through the scanner stably, because a lot of time leader is the stuff that gets really shrunken or twisted or messed up, and so yeah, we don't just buy coffee, but we buy other supplies, things like that. Thanks again for tuning in. As always, I heart films. But we will see you again tomorrow, Tuesday. Reminder, please rewind, love each other, and we'll see you soon. Take care.